Iron Might it for +9 attack, and then free reconstruct and get it up to 20 attack. So from 1 attack to 20.
Hello and welcome to the Forgeborn Finishing School. Kckid and Koar here. We'll be analyzing Forgeborn battles to help take your game to the next level.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We had an action-packed weekend with Fusefest here in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we're going to spend this episode just kind of going through some of the events. Really, it was 3 major events that we're going to talk about today, and so we're going to jump right into it. Before the event started, though, Friday, we did have a kind of community meet and greet get-together at Surly Brewing Company, which was just kind of a nice way to get together, break some bread. There was about 20 people, I think, that got all together. I had reserved a space of about 15, so we got real comfy on benches and squeezed in with each other, but had a great time meeting everybody. It was really cool to meet people we had met before from across, the United States, and then a bunch of new people, Greg.
Yep. Yeah, it was a lot of fun just hanging out, chilling. The social aspect in the community, I think, is what I enjoy most about this game. I think I've said that before, but it's the community and being able to get together and was awesome.
Yeah, it's just, it's like an extended family that's geographically dispersed across the United States. We've only met a couple of these people, 0 times, a couple, two, 3 times, a bunch one time. But you get together, it's like you hadn't been apart because you go from seeing them the last time to just hanging out online, playing games, talking about Solforge Fusion, and it's just great to see everyone again. And so Saturday morning, though, the event kicked off, and we kind of all showed up at the St. Paul Intercontinental Hotel and walked in. And Stoneblade representatives were there to kind of meet you. We had Church, Lucas, Fletch, Andrew, everybody there to kind of meet you as you walked in, which was really great. And then the whole table filled with the last winter product. You can see it. It's a real thing. It's ready to go. You can see the awesome play mats. They had them go. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I say that the playmat looked really nice, and they also had the promos, which I loved. So
one thing I really liked is that too the playmats there. They had them for sale, and then the same playmats that you could actually win in the sealed event. So it wasn't like an exclusive prize. Like they were that cool, and they were $15, Greg. Super reasonable.
I was impressed with the price. I'm gonna be honest, and the minions, it was really cool, and they were just up front beforehand. Like, hey, you can buy one now, but you make top 8, you're gonna get one. So, first interactions going to the event. Like we got in there, I think 9:30 in the morning. Was it 9?
A little earlier, 8:30.
A little earlier, right? Didn't kick off till 10, but you said if you get there early, you can get your deck beforehand, so you can kind of take a look at it, get to learn the cards, talk with people, or play test, right? So we got a few games in to kind of figure out how our decks went. So that was just front up going in. Initial reaction was great, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's a lot of positive things we're going to talk about Fusefest, but to go into like the reasonable pricing for the minions, we each bought a pack of minions there that we hadn't seen before. It's like $5 for a pack of minions. You got me. I'm gonna buy them so I can play with them today and enjoy that. And then $60 to get into the event, and you were promised 2 boosters for the last winter. So like your entry into the event was retail price, which is amazing. Like Stoneblade, this is a community event, and Stoneblade did this for the community. They didn't make money off this event, I don't think, just based off entry fees alone. Perhaps from selling some products and stuff, but not that much, I would assume. So another thing I do want to give a shout out to. This was all really decently well done, like community service, I think. But let's jump into. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know this is Fusefest too, but this is also like the big, they're gonna have there's gonna be some local communities with pre-release events for set 3, when that comes out. But this was like the premier pre-release event, and the community aspect, like you said, was top notch. Having Lucas, Church, Fletch, right? Nick Fletch, who was, kind of was the lead on this set. And then Andrew, who does a ton of work on the app itself, right? Available. They were just, mingling with everybody. Like, people ask questions. They were playing games. They were in the tournaments, in the events, right? It was just a really great experience. And, it's top notch. Well run.
So let's jump straight into the sealed event that morning. So you kind of talked about, we got there a little early because they said we could open our decks and start looking at them as early as 8 o'clock. So I think we showed up about 8:30. Obviously a bunch of hellos, high five and hugs, all that good stuff. Got our packs, cracked them open, started looking, talking, sharing with all those around us. And you and I, Greg, we kind of jumped straight into it. Like I looked at my decks and made an assumption. I'm going to put purple, green here, and I'm going to put red, blue here. Let's jam some games. Let's play it and see how they play. So we got to squeeze in 2 games actually before trying each of our different half decks really, and that helped inform our decision into going into sealed. And so you ended up with a purple green deck running Nyx Nakia. Kind of talk us through this this Fuse deck.
Yeah, so you talk about how they kind of like, so I mean, to start off in our play testing, right? So I went, okay, well, I have a red deck and I have a blue deck, and I have I was looking to play for fun that I think would be somewhat competitive was a purple blue stealth deck. I didn't really get that. The second thing, if I wanted to play competitive, was looking for Hantu, which we will get into probably later on in this discussion. I didn't get that. So our first play test, right, was so I decided, well, the green deck and the purple deck were probably my strongest. They fit together well. But we also then play tested. I think I ended up tossing the red deck into my green deck to see how that paired, and it paired better in the play testing, but it was against a different deck of yours. But I still wasn't very comfortable with it. And I already had the purple sleeve, so ended up going with this. And this actually ended up performing higher than my initial expectations playing it against you. So the
that's
premise
just because
on
I'm
this,
a higher caliber player than you're used to, right? Of course. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I never, I always, hey, I'm always saying, when it comes to like player skill level, like, yeah, I'll put you above me. And so, what I was looking at with the green deck is the, might of the might of trees. This is a great card. I think everybody that had this card realized, and they probably knew going into this is a great card. At level 1, it's kind of rough to play, so if you have a way to get around that, that's great. And I did have a way to get around that with the Caller of Souls, which I did use occasionally, but it's play a wisp, upgrade a card. But then level 2 and 3, level 2 is play an Oak Father, upgrade a card, and then level 3 is play an Oak Father, play a card. And you upgrade it. It's a creature, right? So like, this is great to get online. This is just a great card. If you see this in your deck every time, you're happy to see it. Overgrown is situational. There are some people that got this off really well. Joel, for instance, Tater Tot Eat a Lot, was using this as an underdrop to use with his Dark Shaper Savant, because he would get to cycle 3 and he'd be like, I'm going to play a level 1 card, and then I'm going to play a bunch of level 1 and another level 1 card that I didn't play. And then your opponent may not have those. I was playing this as, I need to play this so I can get advantage in cycle 3. This deck for me, was designed around winning in cycle 3. And so I was playing this every time, even though if it gave my opponent an advantage, which in half my games, it gave them more an advantage than it gave me, just because of the way the board state played out. But when it gets to cycle 3, you just get to play 2 creatures or exalts for free, and you gain life on each of them, right? And in cycle level 1 and 2, it's just your opponent. He gets to play 2, and then you get to play 2. It's never worked out for me really well in half my games in the first 2 cycles. Cycle 3 was amazing. So it's primarily using those, and then just using the Ferocious Aetherhound worked well for me. The Shroudstone Splicer occasionally worked for me. Again, that's always a great card. You never it's an older card people are aware of. Take it on Alpha, again, a good card. I didn't really get to use the Torigami Mender or the Tremosaur very much. So for as far as green went, it was Overgrown, Might of Trees, Ferocious Etherhound, and Earthshroud Beetle. With the other ones playing occasional value just because they're good statted or dropping the creature. The Earthshell Beetle did not work well in my deck, but I found that if I just got the level 1 upgraded, it worked really good with the Nyx Nakayo I was running, who was able to give it the +4 attack in cycle 2. And then people, every time I played that, people were like, how do I deal with that in cycle 2? Because it had 5 armor. And it was an 8-5, which actually ended up being a 12-5 because I was using Nyx Nakai's build. And people were like, well, that's an issue in sealed. So did work really well for me in that. The main part of the deck really was based around the creatures in the purple half. Restless Dead worked well for me. Sorry, I went back to spells here. Reanimate Spirit, I have a lot of spirits in this deck. The spirit synergy is very strong in set 3. I really like that aspect outside of one card, which we'll get into later. But level 1, it's just you can play a Brute Mini or Reanimate a Spirit. So usually it was a Brute Mini, but if I needed to bring back the Grim-Gotten Predator, it worked amazingly. Dark Pyrings I never got off well because it always fell when I was off Forge. So I think just about every game this fell when I was off Forge. So I never played it, which is unfortunate. But if you can get this on Forge or in a situation that it works well for, this card is one of the standout cards that I've noticed throughout the weekend. Just didn't work for me. What I really enjoyed playing was the Hematophagic, I can't pronounce words, Ryan knows, Death Seeker. When it comes in, you can destroy one of your creatures gain 3, and then if you had one of your creatures destroyed, you get to give creatures minus stats. So this thing was money for me. Yeah, it was a great pairing, gaining life and using that. Or if I just had a creature already dead, then this just came in and neutered people. Love this card. Haunting Skeleton. Again, this deck is spirit-based. Nyx Nakai is level 4. It requires 3 spirits. That was really easy in this deck, but just 2020, great. Grim-Gotten Predator, amazing stealth creature. Everybody knows this. There's a really great interaction now with Grim-Gotten Predator and Sacrifice Chamber. So every time you do damage to a player, this is whenever you do damage to a player, you get to kill a creature. Well, Sacrifice Chamber is whenever you slay a creature, you do damage to a player and gain life. So if you got this on board, you could just clear their entire board off of the Sacrifice Chamber, dealing damage to a player because it gives it slay ability with that. Didn't have this in this combo, but that's something to look forward to when you're looking at set 3. The Forsaken Geist was just a big body. This played huge. I played this about every game that I could, just having the big body in sealed events. So this was a moneymaker for me. Covetous Bloodlord, another moneymaker for me in this. Being able to just get his stealth damage up really high. It's set at level 2. It's -3 and +6. So it worked really well for me in a lot of situations. And then Caller of Souls. So ended up missing out on the top cut. I lost my last match against Eli, who had an amazing deck, and I believe he went into the top 2. And I lost to Mundungu Matt in the first game as well. And he had a great deck. He plays very well. He's a great player. I think he made the top 8 as well. So I don't feel too bad about where I placed. Given things. Eli and Monday were great players. Had a great play against some new players as well. Was able to hand out some of the promos, Thundersword promos. So it was a fun event. My deck was basically just like, can I get to cycle 3 and take advantage of it? And another call out I'd like to make in set 3 is the Nyx Nakaya. If you want to flip over to her, the Nyx's Rebellion was money for me because it also takes out Exalts. So that was huge.
Well,
being
Nyx's
able to
Rebellion was
control.
great, but it didn't last, and we'll get into
Didn't
that
last.
later.
Yes, we'll get to that later. Yes, but there's a great ability. In the Loyal Beyond Death, I only really used that. Really, that came into the Hardshell Beetle just about every time. And if it got to the third cycle and I didn't see the Hardshell Beetle, I put it on one of my stealth creatures. But and then Dead of Winter did seal me a game. That was huge.
Yeah, with the amount of spirits you're cooking off, I assume you're getting both of those activations.
Yeah,
Generally speaking.
I had it felt like most of my decks in my bench I was playing spirits just about all the time. So it was a fun deck. It was great. Missed the Haunt too, but other than that, it surprised me again against initial playtesting against you. I was not feeling good going into it. After my match with Mundungo, even though I lost, I was like, okay, I can see how I need to do to get this deck going well, and it did do well for me throughout the tournament.
Yeah, a couple of comments I had on your deck is you talked about these two cards, Dark Pryings and Restless Dead, and how you weren't able to get Dark Pryings off, but I think Recursion and Reanimation is kind of a theme of this set, maybe, that we're going to see as very powerful archetypes. And having both of these kind of affords you the more regular opportunities to do so. And you're talking when you play tested this against me, I was playing Hantu, which is we'll get into is one of the very powerful cards of this set. It can be very dominating, so that was one thing to keep in mind. You were testing this against the Hantu, and it was one of our first interactions with it, even though we were looking for it, we knew it would be strong. And then my last comment is Covetous Bloodlord. This is a card that took me by surprise.
It did for me as well.
I had a blue-purple deck I was playing around with in the very last day, where we just had a kind of a casual sealed pod going, and I had it paired in with a Pulse Mage. And this thing being able to reduce the attacks of the things I want to die, and then activating Pulse Mage, all while increasing it. I had a game where the level 1 got up to 18 attack, just because it hung around on the board that long. It can really be sneaky and hang around, because at first people aren't threatened by it. You're using it to reduce your creature's attack, so in a way it looks like it could be helping them, but it just hangs around a little too long, and it does a lot of damage. Very impressive card. I was surprised how much I liked it. The third level, is kind of interesting. It works a little bit differently. Level 2 is my favorite iteration of this card, where you reduce a creature's attack by 3 and you get +6, so you're kind of getting double value. The level 3, though, you reduce a creature's attack by 3, and then you give the Covetous Bloodlord whatever its attack is in bonus. So for this reason, I wasn't too excited about this card, but I will tell you those thoughts were unfounded. This card is good. I enjoyed playing this card a lot. Even the level 3, with Aloyan and Tempest's ability to just boost up stats incredulously. And Utera does it. They've always done it well. But Aloyan and Tempest in this set just go through the roof, and this guy can become an absolute monster.
Yeah, you put it on the point. Like, I first was hesitant about like this level 3, but then I found scenarios where like that is just nasty. And the number of times, and you can see my deck here, I don't have like 0 attack creatures, but the number of times that I ended up having 0 attack creatures that paid off with the Covetous was massive. Like, I was just like, I just target the 0 cost guy, and I get +3. And it happened a lot throughout the tournament. Not even this tournament, but other tournaments, because I ended up playing this card in just about every event that we did, because I ended up getting it. And there were one of the, of course, I had to play purple, which we'll get into, was awesome. And the other thing I just want to say is, like, I want to give a shout out to Lucas. He's designed a purple stealth creature in each of the sets, and so the first one was the Portal Shade, which is one of my favorite creatures in set 1. And then set 2 is the Dissipating Spectre, which I'm not as big of a fan of, but I really like the kind of the design elements of it. And then this is his one for set 3, and it may pass up my Portal Shade favorites. Like, I really like the Portal Shade, just what it can do, and this is just really fun. So shout out to Lucas on that.
Nice. Yeah, this card is entertaining. Okay, so we'll jump over. We'll talk about my deck a little bit. You know, we talked about the play testing. I play tested my purple green against you. I play tested my blue red, and I saw what Hantu could do. But I also in the back of my head was saying, and I even said it to you out loud. I said, Greg, I don't think I should play this purple green. The blue red is better. But we saw what Hantu did against your deck, and so I started with purple green. I played my first match with it. But I very, very quickly swapped to blue-red. I won my first match, but then I swapped to blue-red very shortly after that because I just felt like, you know, this is going to be fun, and I think it has better answers to what I was seeing out in the field. Like, if people are going to play Hantu, I think they have better Hantu decks than me. And I'm not going to be able to compete. Mine didn't have the recursion or reanimation. So if you're going to run into 50% of your matches are against other Hantus, and all those Hantus are better than yours, you got to find a different way to win, right? You have to buck the meta. And I took a chance here with the blue-red, and I was not disappointed. I will tell you that this iteration of it isn't gonna stand up to some of the best decks. But what it can do is answer just about any given board state at any given time. Like, it really does have some very odd answers. And so I'm going to go through a bunch of these cards and just explain, like, you know, the toolbox aspect of them and why they served me well. And so that way you'll see, like, I never, you know, I would say I had maybe one card that was absolutely pivotal to my deck, but it really wasn't that pivotal. Like, this is going to sound crazy, my Ironbeard was probably the most pivotal aspect of this deck, the Forgeborn. And then the two cards that made me choose to play this was the Reconstruct and the Aerial Assault. But I want to kind of go down one card at a time and just talk about this. So the Guard Justicar, look, this guy comes on as an 8/5, which is huge, but it also gives you 4 armor, you as a player. So what this would allow me to do was offset the Justicar into an open lane and accept damage. But offset that damage by 4 so that I could go into the next phase of combat on Forge with an 8/5, which is huge in Cycle 1. And then worst case scenario, it's an underdrop missile later on to take out a creature, give you some armor. Lightforge Sentry. I totally underestimated this card. This thing was huge, absolutely huge. With my ability to keep creatures alive in this deck, this thing was like pivotal. I was always finding myself targeting lanes 2 and 4 to place my creatures, and if I somehow ended up with a creature alive in 1, then I would start the 1/3/5 cycle, all with the idea that this guy might come along and provide me a little bit of armor or attack to make those effectual trades that I otherwise wouldn't. I almost always got 2 or 3 for 1s with this card. It was that pivotal, which was kind of wild. I didn't see it being that useful. But yeah, it often allowed me to drop in, block a creature or kill a creature, and then keep 2 creatures on either side alive, or vice versa, kill 2 creatures. Metamind Warden. Hey, this card is going to be great. It's going to be great in the right decks. It's not going to be great in this deck that really has no upgrade synergy other than the much maligned Eloyan Monolith. So I didn't have a lot of ways to ready this outside of the Eloyan Monolith or the card renewal we'll get into. But what I did do was drop this as a 4/4 to just once per turn reduce the attacks of things. And people took that as a threat to, like, their existence. This was, when I put this card on the deck, it was on the playfield, it was enemy number 1, even if that didn't make sense. People would target this thing, go out of their way, make bad plays to get it off the field. So it was kind of a lightning rod, which served me very well. All right, Tactician kind of brings its way back from previous sets, but mobilizing is a new keyword, and it is amazing. Giving a creature mobility 1 that exists on the field without it and playing a body is huge, and I think that's a pretty new aspect we get outside of, like, Caller from set 1. And this allowed me to do a lot of things with Reconstruct, which doubles the attack of a creature. We'll get to that a little bit. And then Portatron 2000 makes its way back from set 2, mobility shenanigans to swap lanes. So there you see, like, a lot of the shenanigans. Now we're going to go into my blue spells. Aerial Assault, like, if you haven't seen this thing, everyone's talking about it. They're going to pair it with a Betrayer Kid Icarus. And, you know, we all know Vid Icarus's ability says slay, When you you destroy an enemy creature, ready this card is basically it. So aerial assault gives it mobility. It can move lanes into a lane with a creature, kill it, ready itself, and kind of just shuffle down the board. I didn't have a Kid Icarus, but having an Aloyan Murder on a stick card is pretty good. It is more awkward than you would think. Most times people aren't going to offset a creature one lane away from you in an open lane. So this is kind of a hard card to make usable, but when it works, you get rid of some huge threats. We're talking like dark hearts or things people don't want you to kill. They're always going to put them in an open lane, and it often is sitting beside a creature because at that point you have enough creatures on the board. Skip right over Aloyan Monolith. It allows you to upgrade a card and a creature survive. I did play it one time to get that armor and provide an exalted ability, but it's pretty rare. Drone Hive. This can be good with Blizzard Shaman. I did do it once to activate Blizzard Shaman, kill 3 things, and pop some gizmos out. But it's pretty odd. Here's one of the big reasons I played the deck. Reconstruct. So double a creature's attack at level 1. Alright? It does the same thing at all levels basically, but it becomes free at 2 and 3. It is level gated, so that's something to keep in mind. But basically it becomes free after the first time you play it. And with the amount of mobility that I have in this deck and how fast and how hard it hits, this doubling a level 1 creature was never a detriment to me, and I underdropped it in cycle 2 many times because I always kept creatures alive longer than they should stay alive with the mobilizing in my deck. And so it was very powerful. And then Renewal, give a creature 8 armor, this turn ready it. I used it for both effects differently, or once in both cases. So I used this card 3 times. I didn't think it would be very good. I still don't think it's great, but it's a really cool toolbox card. Now we're going to go into red. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was less excited about the red. And I still think that the red is the first thing I would swap out of this deck and put in a different red. But the blue has some cool stuff. So Ardent Worm, this was a missile to remove things, a 7/2. Nothing different there. Blizzard Shaman, I think we all know. Elementalist Knight, I was not impressed with this card, and I think I played it once and never tried to play it. 5/2. Exalted, when an enemy creature with 4 or less enters this lane, destroy it. It's kind of lane denial, but 4 or less, it's really just ensuring it doesn't get chumped by a wisp. It's kind of its aspect there. And then Energizing Stone Fist. Look, this is a good body, and it kept my Deep Frost Hills around a little bit longer, which was a really important part of this deck. So this card got played at every single game, I think, almost. Even if I played it and didn't get effective the energy counter, I didn't have something to put it on, but it was still a 4/6. So now we're talking the red creatures that were effectual in my deck that really made a difference. I played very often was Energizing Stone Fist, Fleet Smash Fist as a 5/4 with mobility. Mobility was probably the most important aspect of this card, but the slay and give another creature additional attack did pay dividends, right? If I'm giving you 2 attack, well, with Reconstruct, that's 4. If it paid off over 2 turns, that's not 4, it's 8, it can add up very quickly. And then Nargath Commander, you're kind of popping your friends on the side of you, giving them attack. All of those seem like small numbers in the beginning, but they get a little wild. And then talk about wild, we got the Wildfire Maiden. This is the other one that I think this was the one I dropped the Aloyan Monolith just to get her exalted and to be able to take out a creature for 2, which helped seal me a game out. And then the spells, Ashurian Flame. The very first game I played, this paid off huge. I got 2 kills for 1. The rest of it, I was actually kind of disappointed in its ability to remove creatures. And I think part of that, we're playing sealed. People are playing pretty big creatures. 3 damage wasn't enough to remove multiple creatures, generally speaking. But these last 2, Deep Frost Hills, this thing's huge. I think I explained this to some people before at the table, like, if I play all 3 levels of Deep Frost Hills, I am probably in a lot of trouble. But if I play 1, I'm perfectly on game plan, and 2's okay. This is an answer to a lot of things where I just say, hey, I can't deal with that right now. That's a future Ryan problem, and that guy's pretty good at dealing with things, but today I'm not, and I'm not going to touch it this round. And that's what Deep Frost Hills allows you to do. Deal 3 damage, but push it to the back lane. Like, get out of here. We'll deal with you later. And you'll be softer at that point, right? Even the first time I played this against you, Greg, I was like, push that to the back lane. And you're like, well, it does 3 damage. It kills the creature also. I was like, oh, hey, added bonus.
I think it was like my Grimgon or something. You were just like, push it back. And I was like, no, you just kill him.
Yeah, it was the Grimgon. Yeah, I was like, I can't do anything. Well, I got to play this.
There goes what I was going for.
Yeah. And then the Mount of Heroes. My goodness, if I ever drew this card and I had a chance to like be okay giving up a little tempo, because this is a tempo loss, generally speaking. But you get it to level 2. I never got it to level 3. I didn't feel like I needed to. I got it to level 2 quite often, and it was monstrous. So level 2 is basically, the ability is the same numbers all along the way, right? Deal 2 damage to the creature in this lane and give yourself 4 attack. But level 2 is give you and the adjacent creatures plus 4 attack. And level 3 is all your creatures 4 attack. So I think you see kind of a theme going on here. And then to talk about Ironbeard, right? So knockback, this in Deep Frost Hills. What this deck was looking to do was chisel you down quick and then get you at about 25 life. 25 and under life is where I felt comfortable that I could kill you with 1 creature. And that's kind of saying something. And that's what the intent of this deck was. Get you under 25 and then wait for you to make a mistake and kill you with 1 creature. And that was all in cycle 3, generally speaking, with Iron Might. I would find the creature that you left, or a lane you left unblocked, and I would either give that creature mobilizing, or give it mobility with the mobilizing Tactician, or Portatron it out of the way when it's in the front line, and then drop Iron Might to give it 9 attack, drop a free Reconstruct, double its attack, and then it very quickly went from small to not small. One of my games I won because I had a creature with 1 attack in the front row, and was able to shift it out, Iron Might it for plus 9 attack, and then free Reconstruct and get it up to 20 attack. So from 1 attack to 20, sealed a game there. That was really what this deck did. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I'll just try to kind of go through this real quick here. Hopefully, probably not, because I like to ramble. Since you have Ironbeard up here, I'll go through it real quick. I think Ironbeard is much better in set 3 than prior iterations. I really like that. As you mentioned, Iron Might is a game ender, and Shield Slam is also a game ender, right? When you're putting 3 on all your guys, you're like, I'm off for to have a guy in the front that has enough physical damage, which is like 4. Sometimes it's not that much. You don't need that much. Yeah. You just you have on the stick remove a creature, essentially. That's massive, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have other shield guys. So I like this. The knockback is good at cycle 2. If I'm gonna see knockback cycle 2 work, makes sense. I'm okay with that.
Yep. All right, so let's jump forward to the storyline event. And the storyline event kind of took place basically at the beginning of Fusefest. We were given lanyards, and with your name on it, basically. And so, we were given a lanyard with our name, with a place to put our name, and you weren't told any reason what the lanyard was for. And there was 5 colors. We probably, if we were more observant, we'd have put together the thought process behind that, but we were very busy with the sealed, excited, talking about cards, playing. I don't know that anyone sat aside and said, hey, these are red, blue, green, and black. That seems
maybe if
similar.
This was purple.
Yeah, maybe if it was purple, we'd have all keyed on. But so the storyline event started, and we were given a primer talking about, really kind of like the battle, the rebellion of Nyx, and kind of it's coming to a head here. I'm not going to get too much into the story. I know we're expecting, a storyline lore coming out that gives kind of the real down and dirty details about, like, the courier, the secret message. There was a lot going on there, but we'll let that come out. But we were each put into our factions. And just prior to this, they opened up after the sealed event. They gave everyone 1 free booster, and they said, hey, we also have some additional last winter product that you can purchase. and then you'll be able to use it in the storyline event. Which I think both of us had a little bit of a pause at that, like, you know, hey, you're allowing people with more expendable income to potentially have an advantage versus those with less expendable income to have an advantage. But I think our fears were alleviated a little bit, but we'll get into that in a little bit. You were told to go to your faction, and your faction was correlated to the color of lanyard you're wearing. So we all looked around and we had open packs, and some of us had kind of settled on like, hey, I'm gonna play this because this looks really good. They said go to your faction. If you're Tempest, you must play a Tempest Forgeborn. If you're Necrim, you must play a Necrim Forgeborn. Aloyan, Utera, you know, you get Nova or Oros. So I was kind of like, oh shoot. Well, it's like, oh, okay. Now I'm a little bit glad that a lot of people had access to more than 2 boosters worth of choices, because really you're limited to being forced to play one of 2 red if you just had the 2, right, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, you got the one from the sealed, right, and you got one for the storyline, so that was your $60, right? And then they gave everybody the option of buying the only thing you could buy, you could buy a display. You couldn't buy like 1 pack, right? So everybody could get 4. So you had 6, and I think most people, I'm gonna say almost 90%, ended up buying a display early, right? Since that was an option. Maybe not everybody, but as you said at first, you know, I was saying like, man, this is gonna be really bad. But because you're forced into playing a certain faction based on your lanyard, it kind of makes sense, right? Like because at least you were making sure that you had 6 options at that point to play a deck that you liked.
Yeah, and so then, you know, we got to meet with our team captains, all Stoneblade employees. Vice won, but that team got the reigning world champ as their team captain, so that kind of checked out. I think they had an advantage potentially, but no, just you know, we actually all went into this, we're like, oh, crud, like Necrim, they've got a pretty good chance. Hantu's maybe a problem. I don't know. We thought potentially, and so. Yeah, and Necrim had Fletch as their team captain, which has nothing to do with the team cards there. But I do want to go into a little bit of a segue here. So I was Team Tempest, which I was very excited. Got together Team Tempest. Our team captain was Andrew, and he huddled us together and explained to us, hey, we're out there, we're trying to find informants or agents that we can help. There's 4 options that we can kind of go after, and they read us a blurb about each of the 4 options. And so we kind of look at them here. We didn't know what these cards did. We just knew that there were 4 agents out there: Toxis Mori, Fletch, Penance, and Veil. And the idea of these cards was, you know, there was a small narrative that described each informant or agent that was supposed to give us some clues to their ability. I will say I was pretty far off on most of these, and I think most people were, but I think they gave you some clues as to maybe one of the faction's potential things. Some were better than others, or at least more understandable than others. That's what I should say. My team, Tempest, right off the bat went with Fletch. It was kind of fun when Andrew threw it out, like, what are you guys thinking? There was just this silence, right? Sat back for a second, and no one was really jumping in. So I kind of said, hey, it sounds like Fletch might be like targeted removal potentially, and I think that sounds really good against big problems that we could come up. And we kind of talked, what do you think Toxis Mori does? What do you think Penance does? What do you think Veil does? I thought Veil seemed cool. A lot of people thought Veil seemed cool. So we took a vote. We all vote. Tempest ended up voting for Fletch. How did Necrim go?
Yeah, so for Necrim, I think we were kind of in the, we were kind of looked at him when we talked, and there were people. What was cool was that it was team-based, and so there are going to be people that are more interested in like the card version. There are more people interested in the story, and there are more people interested in version of the decision and the talking of the team-based thing, and so each people had their highlights, right? And so, but in our case, I mean, we were captained by Fletch, so for us, I think the first option was pretty easy. Like, we were going to go with Fletch.
Nice.
But like we talked about, similar to you, and like, well, Fletch sounds like he just deletes somebody, like, or kills somebody, right? And in Necrim, that happened to be the case. So there was some options about going Veil or Toxis, but we just like, I think maybe if Fletch wasn't our captain, we went with those 2 routes, but we're like, no, we got to go Fletch.
Nice.
And so we went Fletch for the first option. And then I think the second option, we went with Veil because we thought like, hey, you know, we all have to play Necrium, right? And so pretty much people that had Haunt 2 played Haunt 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, I think it's possible it could be Reanimate. It's likely Minion Generation, kind of what you guys were thinking as well. But in the off chance that it's Reanimate, I think we go Veil. And then the next selection we went like Toxis, you know, with the thing seemed really cool. So that was our third choice, which we got ended up getting the third round.
So that's very interesting in that something in these stories made Tempest pick the exact same agents or informants in the exact same order. We went with Fletch, we went with Veil, and we went with Toxis Mori as well. Had we known and looked, I think Penance would have been quite a bit higher on our to-do list. But being able to play a free spell and get it back up on curve would have been pretty huge for the Tempest faction, I think. But you know, this is where we ended up, and it all was a lot of fun. You know, you talked about the team aspect. So we would talk, we would vote on Fletch. You guys voted on Fletch, and then you break. You go to your pairings, you play your match, and you go back. And the 3 factions with the most total wins per round got their agent or informant. That we were told to. It ended up being 3.
On the first one, it ended up being 3 because there was a tie.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then that's and so.
And there might have been in the other rounds as well, but it was supposed to be 2, and then there was a tie, and so 3 of us. So it was you, Terra, Necrium, and Tempest all got their first selection.
Okay. So then we played our pairings. We came back, and our team captain, you know, in both of our instances, came back with the Fletch cards, handed them out, and said, "We've curried favor with Fletch. Who do we want to go after now?" And we both picked Veil. Break, go out, you play your matches, you come back. We both got that experience again. Team captains hand you Veil. Who do you want to go after now? It's kind of funny. We all picked Toxis Mori again. And again, Necrium Tempest, our captains came back and said, "Here's Toxis Mori." And so, you know, I kind of go through that scenario to lead us up to the moment here. But then now we were told, all right, the tournament's over, essentially, or the rounds are over. You guys have all been couriering favors with these agents that can help make this pivotal decision in the rebellion of Nyx versus Cersei. The faction that curried the most favor was the Necrium faction. And so the breakdown of faction wins was thus. We had Aloyan with 9 wins. We had Utera with 16. We had Tempest with 21 wins. And then we had Necrium with 23 wins. So this was a pretty close one between the 2 finalists, which was a lot of fun to see. But then the whole room was quiet. All power went to the Necrium faction. And you know what I love to see is everyone else in the room was watching your team huddle this time. Before, we were all off in our own huddles, and we all just stared at Necrium, and you guys had an open team huddle where the whole room could hear. Go through that process, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, it was just awesome. And again, like, it was a team effort. Everybody in the team obviously contributed, you know, a lot. You had to win your games. You had to play. Mm-hmm. I know, you know, shout out to Hellkite. Like, I think he went 4-0, so it's a huge boost there. But everybody in it contributed. And then, you know, we had in the first round, before I get into that, like, we had people end up, you know, the teams weren't even, so some people would switch. You know, we lost somebody to Aloyan, right? And then we had somebody from our team leave, and then Eli, shout out to Eli, coming on board in the very last round to help us out as well, because the teams kind of got this even. So I think they did, as you know, SB, Jurch, and everybody did a well job of trying to keep things maintained and even and using results. But you know, I don't know if it was like we all got together, we were just like, we kind of went in there, and there were some people very strongly for Cersei, and there was maybe one or two voices a little bit quietly for Nyx, but it was like, come on, guys, Queen Cersei, right? You know, going into the huddle, and you know, like Zyphos, Hawkeye, and there were others in there as well. Eli's like, heck yeah, was like, let's go Cersei, and so. We didn't really like huddle quietly to go. Everybody was kind of just like looking at us as we were like, let's do this. And there would be some people voicing their opinion, and we were like, okay, yeah, we could do that, but let's take it to a vote. And it just ended up that I think there was maybe two for Nyx, and the rest were Cersei. It was a really fun experience, but I don't know. It was fun. I mean, we all got there as a team. Like, you had to get. I mean, we beat you guys by what, 3 games? Was that the total? 2 games? Like, it was really close, and everybody contributed. Everybody helped out. I think during our voting process, you know, those that were invested, like, I wasn't really invested besides the first one of voting for Fletch, because we had Fletch as our captain. There are people that really enjoyed that aspect, and so we let them run with it. Those that weren't as interested in saying, you know, who should we go for? Like, we may have made a comment or two, but like, there's some people that really liked championing around like who we should go for and invested in that storyline, and that was awesome. And then we would come back to our huddles, and again, this is outside of the I mean, like, I feel like this is probably maybe for all the teams. Like, people come back and be like, how'd you do? Did you win? Okay, well, you didn't win, but like, did you win? Did you win? Okay, so we got like 6, right? Like, that's got to be good, right? So I don't know. It was fun. It was exciting. It'll, you know, you collaborated with your team. You talked strategy, like, you know, well, what are you using? Or like, maybe if you switch to that deck, you could do this or that. Like, you know, we had a lot of game plans going into it. Like, how can you utilize Hantu the best? Which we were Necreum. But all the other factions had Hantu as well. My losses came to Hantu decks, right? So, sorry if I'm rambling there, but it was just a really fun experience. And I think everybody on the team was invested at some point in it and able to put in their perspective and talk about it and come to a consensus. And I think that was the big thing. It wasn't like necessarily one person. And I know there was a group of people, but we all had the opportunity, and we all were able to talk about it. How did it go on your team?
Yeah, similar. And you know, I kind of already talked about that. Like, very collaborative. Loved that part of it. You know, so yeah, it was great all around. But to the storyline event, so you guys chose to basically thwart the rebellion. You were given the, you know, the yes or no choice. Do we shred the evidence that Nyx needs to defeat Cersei? So we know it's capable. Nyx could have done it. You guys curried enough favor to make the decision. Do you allow this evidence to get to Nyx, or do you not? Your team voted not to, and so now we are patiently waiting for the lore to come out to kind of see how that shakes out and exactly all the details.
Yeah, and there's a part in there that they didn't go over that I'm, you know, passionate about. We can talk about that when that comes out.
All right, so you know, I think you did a really good job of recapping the storyline event there. You know, it was just a lot of fun, collaborative effort. Blown away, the best storyline event I've taken part in to date, and I've said that all the way up until the day before Fusefest 2 that it was Fusefest 1. So I think they really outdone themselves. And honestly, I assume that at this point the collaborative nature is going to come back in some way, shape, or form with the success of this. But if not, hope it's in the plans now, because I didn't talk to a single person that disliked that aspect, and that's what blew most people away. So we will jump over to the constructed, Greg, which is kind of a culmination. It's going to have the Hantu discussion, and we're going to try to keep it pretty slim here. But what we do want to say is this was the culmination of all the events. Players had the most experience in set 3, and they had the most decks of set 3 to make their most powerful pairs. And so we ended up with 22 players that stayed for the constructed, and ended up being Kckid and Steven, the Puffin Man and Hellkite, making it to the finals. They were unable to finish the finals due to travel requirements. I think they ended up putting a pause on this thing at like 7 p.m. on Sunday night to get out of there and fly home. and or drive home. So that match is yet to be done. So let's just break down these decks in a minute, but to kind of capitalize on the Haunt 2 discussion. We talked about how we think it could potentially be an issue, and we haven't shown the card really and actually seriously talked about it, so we're about to do that. But both these finalist decks are Haunt 2. In the sealed, I believe it was 6 of the top 8 were Haunt 2. And then in storyline, Necrim won pretty handily on the backs of Haunt 2, I think. Now that's a little bit of speculation, but Necrim won. Necrim had ready access to Haunt 2. It's obviously not all Haunt 2, right? I'm not saying that. But let's break down these cards and just kind of go through your experience. If you would go ahead and break down Kckid's deck here, and then just first into Haunt 2, Greg.
All right, yeah, talking about Haunt 2 and Kckid's deck here. So Haunt 2, I think, is kind of the big bad of set 3. And I don't know how it will necessarily impact Constructed at this point. I think it will be a contender, especially with a lot of the things that can come along. In Sealed, especially with the avenue of having access to multiple decks, this was the big bad, the boogeyman, or it could be oppressive, right? And so at level 1, level 2, and level 3, they all basically do the same thing. Is when one of your creatures is destroyed, your opponent gets a choice to let you reanimate that or take damage, which is 3, 5, or 7. And I think the problem with this card is that it's a spirit, and in this set, spirit is much more easier to reanimate than anything. There are some things that just reanimate in general, but spirits have a lot of synergy and a lot of reanimation. And so I think that's where it becomes a problem. In I think pretty much every game that I lost in Sealed and Storyline was in decks that had Haunt 2 and had used Haunt 2. In some cases, I had to kill Haunt 2 multiple times, 5, 6 times, in those games. So that's what Haunt 2 does. It'll be interesting to see how he changes the competitive environment when you take into account all of the sets. But in Sealed, he's definitely one to take into account and keep track of. As far as Kckid's deck here, specifically, we have the Carnivorous Tarot, which is always a great card that's helping itself. So there's some other life gain in this deck, with the Druid's Chance is reprinted. And then Viric's Embrace, Forsaken Museum are some of the life gain cards as well. Shambling Direhound, so Shambling is obviously can help with that, but also Direhound is just a great creature. In the first iteration, you can just destroy a creature to bring back a minion, but in Cycle 2 and Cycle 3 is allowing you to reanimate cards, which in this case could be that Haunt 2, which can cause more life destruction. Along with this deck, you have the Abyssal Creeper, which is great. Removal or damage. Crypt Haunter is another one of the cards that we previewed previously before set 3 was released, which is a great way to remove creatures as well. Grimgaunt Predator, we see that in this deck doesn't have all the tools for it, but can be situationally good. Another good card, and I don't know if he used it that much, is Nyrilla Engulfer. He's only got the once Exalt, so probably not as useful in this, but can be in other decks. And then looking over some of the newer cards, naturalizing enemy creatures' alternate abilities this turn. So that's the, can be very impactful against other Haunt 2 decks and other cards. This is a great keyword to look at, along with Prevailing. So this gives it Defender, and at the end of the turn, you may upgrade a creature card into your discard. But then when it gets to Cycle 3, it's just every turn you get to play a card. So if you get this leveled up, gives you very good advantage. Nature Progression, another good advantage card. Just giving creature stats, and then you can upgrade a card, and at level 3, you can upgrade it in your hand, and the card is free. So basically allowing you to upgrade a creature and then play it, essentially, because this is a free card. The big one I didn't talk about is Enduring Ties, which allows you to play the Ruby Leafkin, which is the one that, you can't just you can't just kill with massive amounts of attack. You're going to have to slowly kill this every turn unless you have direct removal. So I think its ability to get back the Hantu, as well as its stickiness of the Leafkin and the other things going on with this deck. Big creatures, Carnivorous Tarot, Sharp-Leg Behemoth. Shardbound Vexor works well, I think, a little bit better in set 3, so that's seeing that as a betrayer is an interesting choice. I've seen some success with that in set 3 more than maybe in set 2. But what are your other thoughts on this run? I kind of went over the big cards and some of the things on there.
Yeah, I do think Shardbound Vexor actually might be a little harder in set 3, because from right now, from what I'm seeing, some of the big bads of set 3 have higher attack. Like in set 1, it's a Dark Heart. Once we start mixing sets, I think Shardbound Vexor is great. I liked it in set 2.
That's a fair point. Yeah, maybe.
So it's a Dark Heart killer, right? On level 1, Dark Heart has 2 attacks. Shardbound Vexor hits it, reduces attack to 0, and kills it. It's great. And then Sharp-Leg Behemoth is also a Dark Heart killer, so that's very cool to have 2 Cycle 1 cards that can kill a Dark Heart just through sheer combat. I always think that's really good. Other than that, you broke this down really well. The only other thing I really want to add about Hantu, so we've talked about reanimation recursion being kind of a huge thing. Hantu itself isn't oppressive. I don't think by itself. Having one Hantu on the board isn't a problem. The problem is when you get 2 Hantus on the board. And that's what these decks do really well. And now actually, big kudos to Kckid. Like, he only had the 1 recursion card in the Direhound, and he had to level it up to 2. But just because it's not oppressive doesn't mean it's not good. Like, it's still really good with 1 Hantu on the board. But the decision for me to take 3 damage and not allow you to reanimate is a decision I can make for 2 rounds while I kill the Hantu. But the second you get the level 2 and the level 1 on the board, now I have to take 8 damage for every 1 that you want to remove. Or God forbid, I had this happen to me. The 3 and the 2 on the board, that you have to take 12 damage or they get a reanimated creature. I very quickly ran out of health and couldn't win simply by killing the same creatures over and over again. So that's where Hantu, I think, really seriously becomes a problem.
Yeah, and to call it out there, like, I agree with you. I think if it was just Dragon and not Dragon Spirit, I think it would be a lot less impactful. I think it would still be impactful. It's still a card that you would want to look for in your decks.
The spirited aspect would remove a couple of recursion capability, right? With the Dark Pryings, I think it is, and then, the Restless Dead, and then the Uteran keyword and Spirited, which we don't see here, but allows you to reanimate a spirit.
Yeah, and Spirit is huge, which we don't, again, as you mentioned, we don't see here, because that allows you to replace it with a Spirit and then give it stats, which is massive. The other thing to keep in mind with Hantu is that for players playing against it, you're going to start seeing it in the application, is that you want to target it first because it doesn't apply to itself. Now, if you have the level 1, level 2 out, the level 2 will apply to level 1, the level 1 will apply to level 2, but for the card itself, it won't apply to. And the app has that right. The app does make it very hard or impossible to know which one you're reanimating. So if you kill multiple creatures during a turn, and I believe somebody has already placed a bug in to try to make that more accessible. The other thing I wanted to bring up that is really good and gives Kckid probably used much to his advantage, as I'm guessing he's running Cersei, which has Grave Robber at level 1, cycle 2. And seeing as he probably faced Hantu's 50% of the time, and then when you get in the top 8, he's probably just about placing it every single time. So if you can kill that Hantu in cycle 1 or in cycle 2, you could then bring it back onto your board, because you can steal a creature from the opponent's banished pile, and so stealing an opponent's Hantu just doubles the effects, right? If you already have your Hantu on the board, or if you have your level Hantu on the board. So that's a really great ability on Cersei. So you're going to start seeing that in competitive play. I think purple is still one of the top dogs, purple and green. I don't think that's shifted. I think blue came up a little bit above red. That's my initial feeling. I like blue in some decks, or at least blue got much more strengthened. So Seagrave Robber a lot.
Yeah, and then the last thing I will say on Hantu, just for newer players, if you're ever given the choice in app or against a player to reanimate or take the damage versus a minion of any type, obviously allow them to reanimate the minion, because minions, once they disappear from the board, disappear into existence, into the ethers. They don't exist, they can't be reanimated.
Yep.
So just something, if you weren't aware, always allow them to reanimate minions, because they actually can't come back.
Always reanimate minions and reanimate grave robbed creatures, because reanimate only works from your pile. So if you're stealing somebody, or if somebody stole something from you, just let them reanimate, because it should fail by the rules.
That's a great point. And now we are going to talk about Steven's deck. I'll break through this a little bit, and then what we see here is a very interesting spin on the Hantu archetype. So we'll start with Hantu. We know what that does. But something it does differently in this deck is it has Ator. And so Atar drops the Cloud Rift lane. When one of your creatures in this lane damage the enemy player, transform this. So as soon as Hantu or anything else damages the player that's transformed. Now, by the way, your Hantu, when it damages the enemy player, is also damaging a creature on their board. So you're almost always forced into probably allowing them to take the creature back if you can't afford that hit to yourself and that hit to one of your creatures. If you have no creatures on the board, sure, that's not so bad, but then you're probably not winning the game at that point, right? So this could be very powerful. I'm not surprised Steven was the one who found this or is running it. Very creative person. But we'll go through this. I mean, oh my, Brood Demon. This is a sealed powerhouse. It's a 5/8 alone, and then you get an option if you want to turn it into a 3/6 to make something else +2/+2. That's a really cool option choice. And then you get another one with Brood Shard Witch. I think it's less exciting on the Shard Witch. She turns into a 1/5. But having that flexibility to put the stats on your Hantu to keep it alive, or however you need to. Caller of Souls, we know this is good. It allows you to get things back on curve that you missed, and it allows you to do it very reliably and easily, because you get to choose, is that card in my hand and I don't want to play it this round, or is that card in my discard because I already missed it? You get the choice, and at level 2, Greg, you just get to do both. Like, this card, when I first saw this card, I was like, okay, the level 3 is bananas. I didn't think of the level 2 and 1 that well, but it is so good, so good. And the level 3, in these spirit decks, you activate, you get to kill all of your opponent's creatures. Like, that's fair.
Yes.
That's fair.
It's good
with
Hantu.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. You might end up killing yourself. So you talked about Darkshaper Savant earlier, and we didn't really have it up on display, so I want to give this a minute. Darkshaper Savant is much like Flameshaper Savant in that when you play a level 1 card, you get an action, and the numbers follow the same, but it's not damage to a creature or player, it's minus stats to a creature. Same denomination of 1, 3, and 5. So that's a pretty decent card when used with Underdropped Overgrowns, which is what you mentioned before. Or other things to drop multiple level 1 cards.
Hive Drone is, I think it's what it's called.
Yeah, Drone Hive. If you had like a Fury Shard back on, it drops out a bunch of gizmos, but then you probably killed a bunch of things. So it's like Lycian, Rain, all those things. Oh, talk about Shardbacks. So here's the Shardback. Deal damage to creatures across the board. Obviously not as good as some of them, but here's a really fun card. And I think it's just really fun in an Ator deck. If one of your creatures was destroyed this turn, deal 6 damage to an enemy player. Now that's its level 1, right? It does the same stats all along the way, but 6 is a ton at level 1. And if you can drop this in a conduit lane, that's 6 to a player, 6 to a creature. And you get the body on the board, so pretty impressive. Stampeding Mongosaur, targeted removal, we all know this is a good card. Dreadbolt, good card. Infernal Ritual, very good card. Game Ender. This was like, everywhere I looked, this was ending games in the sealed tournament. Because so many people were playing purple was probably part of it, but it was phenomenal. And then River of Souls, I think this is the predominant recursion card, probably. But they're all really good. But there's just so many is what makes it a problem.
Yeah.
So this is the Exalt. At level 1, you're just putting a zombie minion on the board. This is the tax you pay. It's a tempo tax, but it gives you 2/3/3 spread out as you need them. It's pretty good. But level 2, this is where you're bringing your level 1 Hantu back for fun. And then when he dies, you do it one more time. Bring your level 1 Hantu back again. Level 3, you bring your level 2 Hantu back. And when it dies, you got an energy counter, you do it again. So this is 4 extra Hantus with this one card, which kind of leads to the problem, you know, that we talked about before. Aether Tap, I'm curious if this was ever played. Is situationally useful, of course, but I don't think it's the greatest card that's out there in set 3.
Not in this deck. I think it has its uses in some others.
Yeah, but you know, if it's not, if the creature isn't in an Exalt lane that you're putting it on, at level 1 you're simply getting 5 attack. You know, level 2 it's 7 attack. Is that useful? Absolutely. Sometimes you need to do that. But you really need to get it exalted to make it pay off. And then, as we see with most set 3 cards, like even more than the other previous 2 sets, things go through the roof. You know, 90 degrees into the 3rd level. So this goes, you get 2 Spell Swarm minions, which is pretty good. So this deck, I think, is a lot of fun. You know, like the Ator, Sky Conduit, Hantu, and I say fun loosely because this is a very mean deck. If you go against this is a very disturbing deck to play against. I'm quite certain. I haven't played against it, but just looking at it, I can theorize. And having access to my Hantu, and then being able to get my Hantus back 4 different times and still have the level 3 Hantu, and then having, you know, access to Sky Conduit on top of that, it just seems pretty mean. So, a couple cards in there that you want to really call out, or overall strategy, Greg?
There's a lot of things going on with this deck that I like. I think you covered a lot of the points, right? Like River of Souls, Hantu, the Ator. I mean, I had a lot of fun with Ator with Shambling, Stormcaller, and Darkheart. But Hantu just like, I feel like Hantu alone like suppresses those 3 together, right? And I know there's other people that have been doing that as well. So having Ator in the set with this just makes this hilariously fun and obviously very good. I don't know if you use that as well, and then he has the Shard back with everything else that's going on. Mount of Heroes, that takes damage, right, Ryan?
It does damage to a creature to increase attack.
Yeah. So you have that with the Shard back. You have the Nagaroth Commander with the Shard back. You have the Stomp-Eating Longosaur. You can even pop your Wildfire Maiden onto your Shard back with this deck. And I don't know if those are things that I would have caught without seeing this deck. All of those things hitting that Shard back without reviewing it, right? And Hellkite comes out with it and let's do it.
Yeah. Lots of good point with the Shardback Nucleus, which, you know, honestly, it's a decent stat line with the Emboldened as well. So that's a good point. But yeah, so that's kind of just our thought process. You know, like on the whole Fusefest weekend, you kind of went through it all. So you can see maybe we have some concerns about Hantu that it might put a little bit of a damper on, you know, potentially sealed future of set 3. And now don't take that as a doom and gloom. We don't know yet fully, right? This was one weekend of a bunch of events, but I will say you had a bunch of the best players that are spread out across the United States, all meeting in one place. You mentioned Hellkite, you know, Cade, Eli, I could go on and on and on. Sorry if I don't name you. You know, like Mundungu, Nathis, it's just nonstop. All of the most, you know, the best players, the most creative minds, and the majority of them ended up settling on Hantu in some way, shape, or form, but not all. So it's just it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves, and very interested to see how the constructed shapes out for set 3. But there's potential implications for limiting the set 3 sealed experience.
Yeah, you make a good point. You know, I talked. Drove back with Joel, right? Do some carpooling. We kind of talked about that as well in this year's experience with Hantu. I mean, and you can't succeed without Hantu to some extent, right? We've seen that, and not all players that are high caliber were there. But it is interesting to see that when between the sealed events, the storyline, and so at the storyline, right, we talked about you got your sealed event, everybody had one deck, right? We saw Hantu succeed in that. We go to the storyline event, people had access from 2 to 6 decks. That was the limitation, and I think 90% or just about everybody had 6 decks access to. We see Hantu succeed. On Sunday morning, they opened it up to anybody had access to buy whatever they want that was remaining outside of before people, like, they allowed people to, we had, I think, 3 pods kicked off for sealed, 8 total. And then everything else was up for purchase. And this is the decks that were available with all of those things, and we see kind of Hantu again coming to the top. So it'll be interesting to see our sealed deck. Our sealed experience was a lot of fun. In our 8 pod, nobody chose to play Hantu. There was Hantu available, but nobody played it. You made it to the top 8 in the sealed event without Hantu, and I think you ended up winning our pod as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I lucked into some double pulse mage shenanigans, which, yeah.
Double pulse mage. Nice. So, with all of that, like, access to it, and Hantu kind of came out on top on there, you know, it is something to be mindful of, especially in the sealed environments. It is very powerful. It'll be very interesting to see what the constructed set goes to. There are already people looking for Hantus. There's people looking for Sacrifice Chamber, which gives your creature slay, deal 3 damage to an opponent, gain 3 life, which has a lot of synergies with obviously Kindreds, Shardbacks, Grimgaunt Predators. You're seeing people looking for Drone Hives and Sacrifice Chamber used with Flame Shaper Savants and Dark Shaper Savants. So those are things to look for in the set 3 pool for sealed and constructed.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with the recursion, you're talking about people looking for things for sale or purchase. All the on-deploy effects are on the menu. So with the recursion, you get the on-deploy effects, and with Hantu, players choosing not to take damage and giving the reanimate. Vampiric is an option. Any of those deploy triggers are gonna reinitiate as soon as they're reanimated. So pretty huge recursion aspect to this whole set, and we'll see how it plays out. Excited for it. One last parting thought here. If you want to share one of your favorite moments from Fusefest, please do so down in the comments. I will likely share mine, just to kind of type it up and share it out. But had a very fun experience that resulted in a whole bunch of life gain on both sides of the table. So I'll share that one out down there. And then, we'll appreciate everyone's support that we received over the weekend, the kind words, and just appreciate you spending your time with us. So thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for attending this lesson of the Forgeborn Finishing School. If you like this video, please subscribe, comment, or consider donating to our Patreon account. We look forward to our next lesson.